Karibuni sana, welcome. How do you say welcome in your language? Wamgeleni? Wamgelegile. Wamgelegile. How do you say welcome? Ekabo. Which language feels left out? How do you say welcome in your language? Moeseni. Anyone? How do you say welcome in your language? Kabo. Welcome, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Is everyone's language represented? Who didn't hear their language? Welcome, Kabo, Wamgelegile, Karibuni. Thank you for joining us for our session, Unseen, Unsafe, Unprotected. So, my name is Nyawira Wahito, and I'm with the Resource Center for Women and Girls based in Machakos, Kenya. We are so privileged, we're so honored to have you here today. And before we begin, I just want you to use the QR code and tell us what feelings come up for you when you hear of Africa's AI gig economy. Let's just continue as we start, and I will read them, we will see them, we will talk about them, we will feel them, and we will think and reflect on those feelings. So we are here today to spotlight the workers whose labor keeps our digital world running. Often unseen, unsafe, and unprotected. This is not a story about, just a story about technology. It's about dignity, it's about justice, and it's about the right to safety for African workers, especially women, girls, youth, and marginalized communities. I want us to ground this conversation in the realities of gendered digital labor and in African contexts. AI and gig work are not simply technical issues. They are feminist issues, they are labor issues, and they are justice issues. They reveal deep power asymmetries in how technology is designed and governed, whose labor is valued, and whose safety is ignored. Over the next hour, we will hear who is as unseen. Xoliswa, who will come up, will share how young graduates enter the gig economy full of hope, but end up invisible, in precarious roles, and where their aspirations are reduced to survival. Who is unsafe? Kings, please come up, will expose how workers who moderate content or train AI face unsafe conditions, toxic material, no protection, and little recognition, carrying the hidden mental and emotional toll of keeping the internet clean. Who is unprotected? Wuraola and Mina, please come up, will highlight how platform opacity, payment insecurity, harassment, and the absence of safeguarding mechanisms leave workers, particularly women, vulnerable, unprotected, and silenced. Together, their stories will help us understand the systemic harms embedded in today's digital economies and also imagine new pathways forward, ones rooted in feminist care, justice, and collective power. A round of applause for the panelists, please. After lunch, that is a bit weak. Did you enjoy your lunch? Okay, please give them a better clap. Okay, so when we hear Africa's AI gig economy, we hear exploitation, mixed feelings, double extractivists. Surely we are more than those words here. Who has not done their Menti? Please scan the QR code, please, so that we can know who's in the room, what are your thoughts and feelings about AI as we start this conversation, and see where we are situated in our own thoughts, in our own individuality, what we feel. We feel AI is underrated, okay. It's exploitative, it's extractivist, mixed feelings. This is a bit negative. Panelists, you're noting. All right. Any other words coming up before we continue? Okay, potential, one hopeful one, okay. Thank you. Interesting. Okay. Fair, fair kazi. Okay, all right. Underrated. Happy, all right. Has everybody done their Menti? Panelists, have you done your Menti? Thank you. Okay. So we can already see that there's a lot of struggle and negative words emerging here. And so to ground us, we'll begin with the personal journey of a young African graduate who stepped into this gig economy. Please join me in welcoming Xoliswa, Sitengile, who will share her lived experience of navigating precarity, survival, and the emotional toll of digital labor. She will be followed by, as they are seated, Kings. Then we'll hear from Wuraola, and then we'll hear from Mina Bilkis. So the idea is that they will do their presentations. You will listen, you will pay attention, you will follow through, and then you will please take note of any questions you have. And once the presentations are done, we're going to have a conversation and a discussions afterwards. Cool? Okay, so welcome, Xoliswa. No?
Can you hear me now? So I was just talking about my journey as an African girl trying to navigate the tech space. So when I started off, after graduating, I was looking for jobs. And I got this question, are tech jobs obsolete? Because I was very intentional about my journey. From my first year, I took part in hackathons, got to be part of international competitions representing my country, and participated in projects with Cybersafe Foundation, but still I found myself in this situation where I couldn't get a job. I was lucky enough to get a part-time job before I graduated, but it wasn't really in the sector I wanted to get in, which was technology, and cybersecurity specifically. So it made me realize, was I really wrong in what I was doing to just try and create my portfolio, get on my projects and do all those things? Because I was still faced with the same impact that everyone faces, which is unemployment. Next slide, please. Next. So unemployment is an issue that faces the whole of Africa. Africa has the world's largest unemployment population in 2024, which was sitting at 11.2%. And the reality is that 60% plus work in informal sectors with limited security. So South Africa is a stark example of this. Youth unemployment ranging from the ages of 15 to 24 sits at 62.2% in Q2 to 2025, among the highest globally. Even graduates struggle, sitting at 24% of young university graduates jobless during May 2025. So you can imagine as a graduate, no matter you have your qualification, you still struggle to get a job. So where does that leave us? A degree is no longer guaranteed stability. Graduate unemployment has doubled in 16 years, with many stuck in underemployment or endless job applications. AI disruptions and shrinking entry points. So one thing that I faced in my job hunt was that there was algorithmic hiring. So when I was lucky enough to get a job or get an interview, I would be faced with that I did not qualify. Even though it was an entry-level job, I needed 5 years of experience, or I was simply just cut out because my CV did not have the key points or the technical jargon that is needed in the job description. And then you also face things like automation, where entry-level jobs like IT or admin are replaced by RPAs or AL2s. So where does that put us as graduates? With everything being, or with some jobs being replaced by AI. But we also face the thing as gig economy, which is a really big precarity. Many turn to gig work, content moderation, micro work, but conditions are unsafe, low paid, and mentally draining. I can tell you for a fact that one thing I faced was burnout as I was searching for a job, because I made looking for a job my whole job. It was a job on its own. I faced burnouts, rejections, and that was something very difficult for me. But at the end of the day, we all want a job, and we still continue on all those things. So there is a human cost to this. From my own journey, I faced fake job listings, roles that would appear and disappear after some time from the same companies. I'd also face feeling underrepresented, as most jobs, not really most, but some jobs said they wanted 5 years experience, but it's still a junior role. Even though I had tried to create my whole portfolio and place myself in a position that would put me ahead, I still felt underrepresented. As I mentioned before, it took a mental toll on me as I was frustrated and slightly depressed by thinking that all my efforts were not met and were not enough. Next slide. So obviously I won't be all doom and gloom. I will present some strategies. And one of them is funded pathways. Expanding initiatives such as CyberSafe Foundation, which I was lucky enough to be a part of, which fund and train youth in cybersecurity and digital skills. We're living in a digital age, and making sure that the youth is fully skilled and able to adapt in this technological age that we're living in is really important. And donor-backed fellowships and stipends, so young people don't have to self-finance their own way in tech. In as much as we're trying to look for jobs as the youth, we do need something, an incentive, a salary, whether it be minimum wage or whatever, just to be able to cover our costs and needs. Because in as much as you have a job, you need to get transport money, you need food, you need clothes. So in as much as we don't mind trying to build a portfolio, it is better to have a salary. And my second strategy is reimagining entry-level jobs. Companies must create true graduate programs, not unreachable criteria or expecting graduates to hit the ground running, but actually programs that offer mentorship, learning, and rotation instead of immediate productivity. As my own experience, I can say I did try and put myself in the right position by doing all my portfolios, but with the internship that I'm part of, the whole experience of getting someone to mentor me, to sharpen up my skills, because it's a whole different ball game from creating portfolios to being in the industry and working as a cybersecurity intern. So I do urge companies to also be more patient with graduates, as we are coming from a background where we're just learning, and now we're in the job space. So I also propose public and private partnerships. Partner with government skills agencies like Mexita to co-found training pipelines, and build bridging programs with universities and TVET college that place graduates directly into work-integrated learning. One thing I've noticed in South Africa is that colleges do advocate for work-integrated learning, but universities don't do the same thing. If it wasn't for me going through my school emails, yes, they do place those opportunities, but is it a priority? Do they make it a need for graduates to get into those work-integrated learning? Like maybe it being a module that you need to qualify and meet specific hours for working at a company, which leaves graduates in a very uncomfortable space as they're not really prepared. And my other solution is community-centered opportunities. Hackathons and fellowships should lead to job placements, mentorships, and incubations, not just prizes. I've once been part of a hackathon, and being there is really enjoyable, it's really nice, it's good on your CV. But after that, what happens? You just stay, just have the prize what I won a hackathon. So having incubations or being part of a company after winning that hackathon would really be a good incentive. Mental health and career well-being, including psychological support in career readiness programs, normalizing conversations about burnout, rejection, and imposter syndrome in youth employment agencies. I was recently part of an internship last year where I had the opportunity to get access to psychological help through Psyched, which was part of Yes for Youth, as well as mandatory for us to have. If it wasn't for the program advocating for that and saying, okay, you have access to this, I wouldn't have known about it, I wouldn't have used the services. So I'd really like companies and all other sources to make this a priority. As we are human beings, our mental health is also really important. Thank you.
So yeah, good afternoon again. So I'll much more expand on Xoliswa's experience in the dark side of AI. I also have an experience because I'm a former content moderator. So in content moderation, we are like policing the internet. We are the police of the internet. We can decide what goes outside and what doesn't go outside. Sometimes we are told to promote a certain narrative, and the narrative might not be familiar with the people that actually are in a particular country. So this comes in terms of cultural infusion. So I'm going to speak more on that. Yeah. So yeah, about the invisible workforce. It's majorly the moderators, the content moderators. I was part of the team. I actually was part of the team that created the algorithm for ChatGPT, which took a mental toll on us. It's not an easy job like people think. It's a job that demands something from you. And it might demand more than you can give. So in content moderation, what we actually view, we view things like pornographic content, hate speech, but the pornographic content is actually the worst part. Because maybe you are moderating content about children being exploited. That thing can actually hit you really bad. So all these tend to happen because of our failures in the platform governance. Because right now, there are no AI policies in our country, Kenya, where I come from. And also, this year, our president actually assented a bill whereby the AI companies that actually exploiting workers cannot be sued in Kenya. So they actually came together and convinced our president. But the true picture, our president doesn't know, because these are jobs that actually have come up as the world evolves. So what happens in terms of opaque contracts and the hidden clients, when you are given a job to do, you are actually given an NDA to sign. The NDA is actually meant not for you to tell anyone what you are doing, or even your wife shouldn't know what you're doing. But you should try and make it like you are doing a professional thing. So the NDAs also, they tend to have some clauses which are actually affects you after, because in the NDAs, they say, I can give an example. You sign a contract, but in the NDA they say, whatever you see or hear or manipulate, because we tend to manipulate a lot of things, a lot of information, because that's what we are being told to do. So you are, in the NDA, you are not to tell anyone what you're doing. And also, when someone uploads, let me say like a video on YouTube, you are either supposed to suppress it, depending with the information, or promote it. Now, what you are promoting is actually, most of the time, is actually not something you as a person can actually consider it. But due to the big techs, they always have an agenda. When they tell you to push a certain narrative, later you'll hear they're saying that you guys are accepting this kind of culture, then they want to pass it to be a norm. But the people who are trying to make this a norm are the content moderators. They are being told to do these things. So when it comes to the workers being excluded from decision making, this, I mean in terms of what we actually, what our worth is, our value. Content moderation, they tend to pay a bit higher, but in reality, the pay is much lower because there are some things which you need as you are working on this. You need psychological support, you need counseling, you need wellness, but these things are not provided. So you have to use your money and seek the help that you require. If it's medication, you'll have to chip in from your pocket. And I can say they tend to pay close to $2 to $5 an hour. So it actually depends with the company that you are working. So in content moderation, there is the human toll, what people face, as you can see. There's PTSD, there's anxiety, depression. I'm also a victim of PTSD due to what I used to do. So it actually affected me for quite some time. So I'm still in the process of healing, yeah, but yeah, it's something that it's not good for someone to do such kind of jobs. What I can say is that when you hear someone's working as a content moderator and you see his lifestyle has changed or the way he does things, you should try and talk to the person, but don't judge him because there are a lot of things that actually go wrong. So why does this matter globally? So it matters in terms of freedom of expression. The freedom of expression is actually at risk because they say there's freedom of expression, but when you try and maybe say what you want and it's against the vices that we are, maybe the big tech doesn't want, we suppress it. So there's no freedom of expression. When it comes to the safety and rights determined by hidden workforce, it's the same thing that I was trying to tell you about it. There are a lot of hidden things in content moderation. So the safety and rights are actually determined by the content moderators who are given something like a rubric to go through. Then the rubric will actually keep on updating depending on the social lifestyle of the people in a certain country. Like when we are moderating a content, we are moderating content for Africa and Asia. And when we are moderating such kind of content, in Asia, the Asians, they do have their way of things, but you are told to promote an ideology that is not in their country. But you are supposed to promote it in terms of viewers and in terms of interactions. So the people who maybe who will be doing this thing, they're actually not from that country. but they are doing it from another country to try and change the cultural identity of people in that other country. So the pathways forward when it comes to the work about the invisible workforce, we need transparency in contracts and governance. Well, when it comes to governance, I mean the psychological support, the mental health. So yeah, they also need unionization and worker representation. When you're working as a content moderator, up until last year, you couldn't join any union. And you guys, you could not come together because it's also in the NDAs. So how can we can defeat this dark side of AI through unionization? When people come together, now you can have a voice, you can speak. It has happened in Kenya. We formed a union known as the African Content Moderators Union, which actually helps the moderators in terms of support in the work they do. Also, we support them in food stuff, because there's some people who have worked in content moderation and it really took a toll on them. So they are not working, but they need to survive. So we provide basic stuff for them. So the mental health support is actually non-negotiable because it can break families. That's the truth. When you're, let me give you an example. When you're viewing content about children exploitation and you have a son or daughter playing around, then you see what you are doing. And these are things actually being encouraged in another part of the country. Now, you imagine yourself, if you promote such a thing, what if it could have been your child? So it's really a bad thing, working in content moderation. So we also need the binding labor standards, which we are trying to also implement a few policies here and there. In May, I was in Doha. There was a Doha declaration. Yeah, so the Doha Declaration AI bill, which we passed. So there are a lot of policies that we actually need them to be implemented so as to offer much support to the moderators. So also, we are centering the African voices in global tech policy. So like a conference, like a forum like this, we need also to discuss about the policies and how can we help each other to make these things come to light and also protect the workers who are actually working behind it. So our call to action is that the content moderators right now, they're invisible no more, and they are right holders. They should not be disposable labor. What I mean by disposable labor is that when you are working in such a content and it affects you, they actually fire you, or they won't renew your contract when it ends. But they don't do a follow-up about you or your mental health or anything. So if you are affected, it leads to depression. Some people, families break apart. So that's why about the union is to help such kind of people. So all the platforms must be accountable to African workers. You've seen about Meta. They have a case in Kenya, but there are a lot of politics involved. That's why our president tried to pass a law that they shouldn't be sued, but the case is already in court. Another example I can give you is about OpenAI. People don't know about OpenAI, but OpenAI when the people who created it, after doing the job, they were bribed not to talk about it. So yeah, a lot of things do happen behind the scenes. So the future of AI must balance innovation with dignity in terms of ethical AI.
Yeah. Please, a round of applause for him. So we've started with Xoliswa. You took us through the individual journey, and from there we are drawing the mental health challenges that come with that, burnout and job application fatigue. Kings, you've taken us through, yes, you have that job. However, it comes with a lot of challenges to your mental health, and there's not enough support to follow up the kind of things you get to see and interact with when you're doing content moderation. There are no laws and there are no regulations to protect those workers. However, we're also seeing how the collectivizing of voices through unionization is kind of supporting content moderators. So Wuraola, you have tracked vulnerabilities from harassments to pay insecurity. So could you please walk us through how this looks in practice? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. So like King said, rightly mentioned, African gig workers in AI, they provide most of the data of what eventually becomes the information that people ask these tools to help them with in their work. Everything from data annotations, transcriptions, sentiment, label, the things that make AI do relevant work for you. There's a lot of African gig workers that behind that. If I had time for my presentation, you would have seen that I had a theme called Ghost in the Machine. The machine is just working, the wheels are rolling, it's turning, everything is working as it should, but someone is doing all the heavy lifting for that to happen. Ownership and control of this data completely external, as has been mentioned. Everything that is provided by everyone that is a content moderator, everyone that is feeding the algorithms with data, you rarely get credit for that labor that you've provided. The control of the data is also not within your purview. And there's research that also shows that the average earnings for those who are behind this work on an annual basis can be as low as $300. I know that when you do conversions from US dollars to some African currencies, it seems like a lot, but when you think about the health toll it's taking and the fact that these workers don't have the protection of health insurance, pension contributions, group life assurance, which is something that most labor laws deem mandatory for traditional employment, those are not present. When we look at all of that and we look at the salary of $300 annually, I think it's a bit ridiculous when we look at it that way. And labeling is heavily quantified and optimized for platforms, not people. So it sounds like a faraway concept, but think about it like this. If TikTok knows that they would get the most clicks from a video that portrays a child in a weird situation, or a woman who is being bullied, right? Or a person living with disability who is being ridiculed by maybe another person, and that's caught on video. If TikTok knows that there will be eyes on that video for days, I want you to know that the algorithm is going to push it to as many people as possible, right? The more eyes they have on the platform, the more money that they make. And you have to look at that as another area that requires some kind of regulation and advocacy. Another issue I would want to touch on beyond payment in payment insecurity is also the fact that there is a lot of the payment structures that make it so that workers are even unable to access their pay. If you were being paid through a digital wallet, for instance, if that service goes down or your government bans the use of the service in your country, it means you might either be out of a job or you have to seek alternative means of payment that might take you some time to get. And lastly, the workers face surveillance. As much as there is a Rubicon that you're using to decide what goes out to the public or what stays in, there's also surveillance on the side of your employer to see what you are working on the tools that they've provided with you. And I can tell you for free that all devices, all handheld devices that have access to internet today listen to just about everything that you say, except you pick up the device and specifically go to each app and turn off the use of your microphone for every single one of them, which if I do a quick survey around the room, does anybody know that you can do that? Show of hands. If you know that you can turn off mics for most of your apps. Okay, a good number. How many of us have actually done that work? Show of hands. As many apps as you, any. Okay, we have 2 people in the room. So you have, you're not necessarily gig workers, right? But you have the information that the devices are listening. You know the things that you can use to control what information that you provide them with. But for some reason, most of us are not doing the things that are required. Now look at that from the perspective of someone who is in paid employment with these big platforms. You're working for them, you're providing them with all this data, and most likely your onboarding is not going to include privacy and security training. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. They're not going to tell you about the security measures that would protect you as a worker. So next slide. The root cause of why we're here and why we have this unfair situation is that Africa has been promised that gig work is the way forward. It's how we're going to develop. It's how we're going to make the kind of money that would drive industrialization. That's not true. We know enough to know now that the amounts that are coming in terms of gig work are not getting into taxes. People are not using it to do any tangible development within the countries. And that's, the pathway to development is overstated in Africa. And the reason why this is happening is because there's poor infrastructure. Let's start from that. Not all African countries can boast of uninterrupted power supply. Uninterrupted power supply is one of the tools that the internet actually runs on. And technological development relies heavily on that. Also, governments buy into the innovation equals progress narrative without understanding that platform work has a dark underbelly. So you have governments that are saying, we're open, come and set up your data centers here, employ our citizens to work on your platforms. In fact, we're having a lot of African governments who are doing partnerships with Asian companies to provide traffic cameras and all sorts of detection tools. And no one is actually asking the question of, okay, these tools actually take quite a massive amount of data. Who has access to them? what is that data being used for? Someone has your plate number information. It means they have your residential address, your name, your date of birth. Likely will give them access to where you work as well. And the governments are not asking these companies, where else does this data go? You're setting this up for us. You're giving us at a discounted rate. You're building the data center that would help us exfiltrate this data. But like, who else has access to it? That's not a question that's being asked. Next. So what needs to change? We need ethical standards. As much as we all acquiesce in this forum that we don't have AI regulation, for the most part in Africa. I like that in the opening yesterday, someone did mention that, what are we regulating? Do we even understand what this thing does before we think about, oh, we need to regulate it and we need to control who has access to what? These standards must be led by African voices, not just a copy and paste because the EU has done a fantastic thing and everyone is moving towards that area. Now you copy the regulation, but you're not thinking about the context that you're in, the infrastructure that exists that allows that regulation to be practical. There has to be more support for worker-led digital cooperatives. Gig work has come to stay. It's not going anywhere. No one is, the internet and technology that is built on the internet is not going to stop working in the next 10 years, 15 years, 30 years and more. So there will be more digital workers, there will be more gig workers, but there has to be a cooperative that protects them. And platforms should also be built around trauma-informed care. I think that's very important. That's something that's missing. And if African innovators want to build platforms that are local to us, I think that's one area that we can distinguish ourselves. The Asians already did a fantastic job by saying, yeah, we see your Facebook and your WhatsApp. We're just going to build what works for us. And you find that when Asians travel to the global north, they tell you, oh, do you have WeChat? They're not talking to you about TikTok. They have another app. They're not talking to you about WhatsApp. They're using WeChat. They're not talking to you about Facebook. They have something else that does the same thing. And I've been in another room where people have said, well, Zoom is the easiest one that we have. But I mean, there were people in that room saying, these are 3 other platforms, these are 3 other tools that exist and prioritize security and privacy. Why are we not moving to them? Because these big tech platforms, they are scared of you leaving their platform. As much, as big as they are, as larger than life as they seem, they are scared of their users leaving. So if you feel unprotected, unseen, unsafe, the easiest thing to stick it to them is to leave and find an alternative that works better for you. Next slide, and I think that's the last one. If Africa trains the world's AI, we must set the terms. If it's our data and our labor, then our rights must be protected. And on that note, I would just close this out. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Wuraola. Thank you. You highlight a few critical points there. And I remember when I first interacted with this issue of being surveilled and being listened to, I was in a class and we were talking about Shell, the corporation, and the harms it has done at the Niger Delta's oil spills. And after that class, all of us got a message from Shell, randomly in that class, yes. And some of us were getting scholarships from Shell. Some of us were getting money from Shell. It was 5 years ago, and it was the first time I had interacted with being surveilled and being listened to. Now, 5 years down the line, I forget all that, and you know, life happens, and you're talking to your friends, and then you're scrolling on Instagram, whatever you are talking about appears randomly. So there's also a responsibility we owe to ourselves to protect ourselves. And this was also made clear and emphasized when I was having a conversation yesterday with Mina, who's going to come up next. And she was like, shh, put airplane mode. They are listening. Whoever they are listening. So that is a very critical point you highlight there. And as we transition to you, Mina, we have heard all the stories from the individual burnout and fatigue of application and employment opportunities to the mental health toll content moderators have, and what Wuraola's presentation just offered us. So if you could just tell us, what does a feminist inclusive approach to digital work look like? One that doesn't just react to harm, but also build safety into the system from the start. And this is something feminists are always talking about. This is not something we've just begun. We are very people-centered, people over markets and profits. So please, can you offer us some insights?
All right, hello everyone. Are we up and awake? All right, so I'm going to talk about digital empowerment and protection from a feminist point of view, but generally speaking, for women in the gig economy and the media. So a little about myself. So I'm Mina, full name Yasmin, but I go by both. As an individual, I'm a writer and I work in communications. I'm a communications consultant. In regards to digital rights, I work in misinformation, fake news, and working to close the gender digital divide that we experience and what all panelists have talked about. I mostly work in fact-checking. So my question to you all, to ground this conversation as we conclude our individual presentations, is how do online threats like OGBV is online gender-based violence? You have gender-based violence that happens in the real world, and then that also transcends online, which is what digital rights is about, your human rights on the internet. Censorship and surveillance intersect with women's economic empowerment in the gig economy. So I'll read that again. So how do online threats, like online gender-based violence, censorship, and surveillance intersect with women's economic empowerment in the gig economy? I'll take maybe one or two contributions. So I'll open up the conversation. Do I see a hand coming up?
I think it leads to self-censorship. If I would look at it from the lens of those who are into the media, expression workers, I think it leads you to sort of self-censor. I work with a non-profit in Nigeria that is into media capacity development and digital rights. And I remember specifically that we had some interventions that engaged media workers, including women. And two of them gave very stark examples of the kinds of threats they faced. Someone's itinerary was leaked over a WhatsApp group, and some have also faced cyberbullying because of the exposure. So I think it could lead them to, or it did lead them to sort of self-censor and just anxiety anytime they are online or they want to express an opinion online. So I think those are some very, very real threats that could affect women online.
Thank you.
Although it does has affected me. I'm a creative by design as well, and I also have a case of being cyberbullied for, like an AI-generated cartoon that I had posted too. So I think it works both ways, and it could lead you to self-censor and just sort of be anxious that wouldn't you be targeted for your opinion or for expressing a particular perspective. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. And it does go both ways. I was just grounding the question in terms of women, but all genders, of course, are affected by this. I'm going to pass it on to my good friend Rispa, because I saw you resonating. I used to be a teacher before, so if you don't volunteer, I will volunteer you. Rispa, please, can you answer the question? Thank you.
Oh my God. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed the discussion. My name is Rispa Arose. I work with a community-based organization, Tanda Community Network. And to respond to the question, I would say that I agree with the gentleman. It really does silence women's voices, especially those ones who are already pushing work online. Most of them lose out on the digital dividend, because when they're removed from online interaction, if it's like women who are already doing
is about the experience that Xoliswa had with mental health support. So I wanted to ask, I want to ask you, what was the approach of you getting the support? Was there first something like a diagnosis, like when you see a doctor? I know you mentioned that you were experiencing burnout and all of that, but I think that's something you knew when it was happening to you. But with this particular mental health support, what was the approach, that the support was delivered through? So that's my first question, or that's a question. Then, Kings, thank you for sharing that bit about how you guys formed the union of content moderators. Was it African or Kenyan? Okay. Okay, so but I wanted to ask, because I want to believe that it had like an operational base in Kenya. So which legal statutes, which provisions, maybe in your labor laws, did you guys rely on to, form that kind of union? So maybe that could be a best practice that some of us can take back home and see how we can probably push for something like that. Then to Wuraola. Yeah, so my question is, I think that the issues, yes, there are opportunities, and of course there are also threats. But I think that the issues with, because I see that there's a cry for more formalization of the AI gig economy and just, the gig economy generally. But I think it's like an egg and chicken situation, because I look at if there was more formalization, if there was more regulation, both on the labor side and then maybe on the other issues around right-based issues. Do you think, and if we even had better alternatives or African-grown alternatives, do you think that would automatically just remove some of these problems? Now, I want to give you an experience from Nigeria, and which is that some study found that between 2013 and 2022, the Nigerian government actually spent about 2.7 billion on surveillance equipment. And that has been used to track not foreign journalists, not spy agents from Russia or what have you. It's been used to track Nigerians. So if a situation in which we have an African version or a Nigerian version of a social media platform, do you think that these African tech companies, in this case, will just automatically not harvest your data? So, so I think it's like an egg and chicken situation, because I don't know if it was Nina that was saying, at the end of the day, it's still just a business. So would indigenization of our technology just remove?
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
these details.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We'll hear from Rispa. Please pass the mic behind. So please, we'll take a round, and then we'll hear from the panelists, and then we'll close. Yeah? Okay, thanks, Rispa, and then you'll pass it over. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll be first. Thank you, Mina. Thank you, the entire panelists, for the presentation. Mine is just reflection on the last presentation specifically, because sometimes when we are part of the people working for advocacy on these issues, we tend to remove ourselves as not being part of we can all be victims as well for this kind of like OGBV threats, harassment, since I guess my reflection is that we are also part of that gig working workers, with the kind of the consultancies that we're doing online, and also part of like the multiple types of work that we're doing both online and offline just to make the ends meet. And my question is around your point on the different references in terms of networks that could support for anyone who's gone through like this trauma. Are there like a repository? Because I know there's a lot of people who have done a lot to support victims of OGBV, victims of harassment. Is there like a repository where we can have all this listed? And when we go back to our communities where we're working, we can always refer them to such resources.
Thank you. Final question, and then we'll have the panelists respond.
Thank you for such an interactive, informative session from the panelists. I'd like to first go to Kings. Sorry about what you went through. It goes back home. I've gone through a similar on another issue, but sorry you had to go through that. And then I'd like to go to emphasize the issue. I know my brother here has mentioned something about won't the government now do the surveillance when they do the opposite, or what the big techs are actually doing. But then, unless there is what they say, you choose your poison. There is that which will take you fast, and that which will make a slower death. So what do you choose for your country? At least there are safeguards. At least it's a step in the right direction. So we can't leave all into the hands of the big tech. But also, as we have ongoing discussions about each country having an AI strategy and all that, how do we bring the discussion now on having a reassessment or going through, trying to look at these issues that are happening, such as the gig economy? How do we go back to readdress the gaps within these strategies that are coming up? Because we usually get amendments and all that. How do we now go back home to say, to reflect, are these AI strategies that are coming in place, are they sufficient? Do they address these prevailing issues and gaps that people are struggling with? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm being told we have 7 minutes, so I'll give you each 1.5 minutes. And as we end, I want you to, as you respond to the questions, to think about and maybe also share with us, where did you have power? Where does an individual have power in all of this? Where did you see your own power in the situation you shared, from being jobless, job application fatigue? Where do you see whether you had power in what you went through? Where do women have power in this online abuses, cyberbullying? And where do individuals have power when you're faced with opaque contracts and payment? So maybe you can end with that so that we can end on a hopeful and positive note. And can we also have a Menti link up, as we are hearing from the panelists, to answer the question that will be displayed on the screen? Thank you.
Okay, so to start off, where I had power was in choosing the career that I wanted. In as much as the odds were stacked against me, I always told myself that if you don't choose something, you're accepting it. So I always try to choose and be intentional. And in terms of the mental health services, it was with psych. I spoke with the psychologist. I would schedule the meetings, and she would just help me with any of the problems I was going through, be it work, personal. So it just gave me sort of like a bouncing board and just someone to assist me and give me tips on how to go further and be better in terms of my career and personally. Thank you.
Thank you. To answer your question about the union, we actually dependent on our rights as Kenyans. We have freedom of association and freedom of coming together. So we relied on that. And also, bringing people together, we actually use the internet to try and reach out to more people. So we created a WhatsApp group later. Then we also have a Telegram group where we can add you, so anyone can join, because A lot of people didn't want to join because in the NDAs, it has been stated that way. So yes, thank you.
So to answer your question, I'm going to take from what our lovely sister there said. You have to pick your poison. But one thing I'll add on to that is, if the government regulating is the poison, as people, you have the power to elect and hold your elected officials accountable to the promises they made to you during campaigns. I know that what that looks like in practice, particularly in Africa, is quite tricky, but people are doing it. And we really just have to build that resilience to keep doing it until someone listens, until something changes, until things move ahead. And in terms of where do individuals have the power when it comes to opaque contracts, payment insecurities, I would say that there is a value that you provide as a worker, and that's why your employer employed you. If you ever find yourself in a situation that is exploitative, I think you should go back to your source, and your source is the thing that made them see your value and hire you in the first place. I find that a lot of people start to feel helpless when they've been in certain unfair situations for a protracted long a time. You need to remember what your source is. And in terms of privacy and security on a general basis, you have the power to shut things off. These devices do not control you. They are not your master. You can just turn it off and listen to your own thoughts, right? So do that.
To answer your question, you're about to ask if indigenization of big tech is the solution. I don't think so necessarily, because as we also as it was mentioned in the opening ceremony, adopting one thing and bringing your context is not necessarily the solution. But I do believe in acting locally and thinking globally, finding solutions that work for us. So if that's finding an alternative that isn't more harmful, then yes, but not necessarily indigenizing it to create another possible problem. So it depends on your intentionality is what I'm saying. Risper, to answer your question, one resource is right out here, is Safe Sisters. So I'd implore you to look into them so that they can also help with other solutions and other recommendations. And generally about where to draw power, each and one of you have a voice, and each and every single person has a voice. I believe of putting your voice to power, to amplify that. You hear the narrative, oh, you know, the voiceless. Nobody's voiceless. Who or what makes you voiceless is what you should ask. Put power to your voice by telling your stories, by putting truth to power, and then by actioning that power to make actual change.
Thank you very much. I'm seeing responses. Let's see what we think. If you think about where we started and where we are now, how do we envision a safe Pan-African digital space? When we talk about regulating AI, when we think about laws and better online working conditions, this is where we start, by imagining what is possible. So let's see what your responses are, because if we don't imagine, if we don't dream of a better world, what do we have? What do we have? So, a safe Pan-African digital space is unionized. I can almost tell who that is. Thank you. Any more responses as we close? It's equal. Ubuntu.
Ubuntu.
I am because you are. It has legal protection. It is fair. equal, human-centered. Thank you very much. Rights-oriented. Great. I think for me, a safe Pan-African digital space. Okay, we have equal, human-centered, rights-oriented, African collaborative, has legal protection, is transparent. Thank you very much. For me, a safe Pan-African digital space is feminist. Because what works for women and girls works for everybody, guys. If it works for girls, if it works for women, especially African women, it will work for a white man somewhere. It will work for any man anywhere. So with that, good people, thank you for joining us and for engaging, for bringing your thoughts. Thank you to our panelists for your very insightful contributions and for standing with us, educating us about AI, protecting ourselves online, what we can do to debrief the future we are envisioning for ourselves and for our continent. Thank you very much. Round of applause as we close.
And a round of applause for our fantastic moderator as well.
Thank you.